Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 289 of Super Switch Heads, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is David Howe.
My name is Patrick Nisley.
My name is Summer Rain.
Oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest returning to the podcast. We've got the wonderful Katie Shesko on the show. How's it going,
Thank
Katie?
you. I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk some AGDQ and speedrunning and whatever else I can yak your off about.
Yeah, it sounds great to me. That's why we got you on. AGDQ has just wrapped up. We have Katie on herself to talk all about Breath of the Wild speedrunning in general, and AGDQ as an event, how it's evolved, and thus forth. But that's not all we're going to be talking about. We also have a lot of news and rumors that we're going to be getting to before the main topic, some of which is just so much Switch 2 news. We might be having a reveal this week. How exciting is that? There has been some leaked emails between IQ and heads of Nintendo we'll be talking about. Donkey Kong Country Returns is coming out this week, and much, much more. But before we get into all that, how are you guys doing? We have a good week this past week?
I have had a good week. I am working at the plant nursery again this week and had a long day there. But last week I got to focus on working on Monochrome Heights and making a lot of progress there. So that was nice because the nursery wasn't open and I had a whole week to just work on it and just working on the story scenes. We had a lot going on at our house. Like my mother-in-law was staying here because her heater was broken and she was sick. And now I have a dog and 2 cats, and the dog got out a minor injury, and it's just like there's a lot, but all is good. And that's a rambly check-in for me.
Great. How you doing, Summer?
I'm doing okay. My new tradition that I've come to in early January now is just watching AGDQ while I crunch for MagFest. That's been my entire week. Is just I wake up, I turn on the TV, I turn on Twitch, I sit at my sewing machine, I pretend to do my actual job, and I work on my costumes while watching all of these kooky speed runs. We are so close. I've got so much to do still before MagFest, but we're going to get there. It's going to be great, and I can't wait to talk about how great it is, hopefully in 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, I'm really jealous. Every day I see somebody new is going to MagFest, and I'm like, why am I not going to MagFest? So
Yeah.
I think it's a little too late at this point, but maybe next year I'll finally get to go. We'll
I
see.
know someone who has a ticket. Just saying.
For real?
Get rid of it. I do.
There are still tickets.
Let's talk after the show.
Okay.
I don't know. It's really the plane ticket and lodging is the problem, but we'll talk about that.
I mean,
also
I got a
after the
hotel
show.
room.
Okay, well,
That's just me.
we are going to table this, but this is going to be a fun conversation. I've also been having a pretty good week. Speaking of cons, I don't go to many cons, but I did go to an anime convention this weekend. IkiCon in Austin was happening, and so that was pretty exciting. I got to do a panel there with Powerhouse Animation, so that was fun. They had us in like a much bigger room than we needed to be for this panel. It was not a very, there were some empty seats, I'll say that, but it was a really good time kind of talking about some of the ins and outs of anime production here in Texas. And then also, speaking of Powerhouse, we did have a new trailer drop today for Castlevania Nocturne. That is coming out on Thursday. So if you have not put time aside on Thursday to binge the entire series, now is your last chance to call off of work. We do
Thursday's
have
a big day.
Yeah, Thursday's going to be a big day.
You're going to be binging the show while we are working on securing pre-orders for
that's right. And
Switch
playing
successor.
Donkey Kong Country Returns.
And playing Donkey Kong
on my
Country
Switch
Returns.
1. But yeah, no, I'm very excited. The new trailer is really hype. I think people are really excited. I really hope people go and check out the show. If you haven't watched the first season of Castlevania Nocturne, it's a really quick binge. I really recommend it. It's an easy watch. And then, it's a pretty intense show, but it's a really easy watch. And then season 2, boy, howdy, I'm so proud of this season. I think it's the best season we've ever done at Powerhouse. So I'm really excited for that to finally be out there in the open. But Katie, how was your week?
I mean, I spent my week at GDQ, so it was
Amazing.
a pretty good week. A lot of back and forth because GDQ was in Pittsburgh this year. I'm from Pittsburgh, so I commute. It allows my husband to not have to take time off of work so that I can do other conventions later in the year. But it is a lot of back and forth of, kids get on the bus, drive downtown. A couple of days, I had to come back home to do something, and then I was back at GDQ for a couple of hours hanging out with people. So it was a little stressful in that respect, but it was a ton of fun. Met some new people, met up with old friends. It was just great. So that's pretty much my week was GDQ.
Amazing. Can't wait to get into much more of that in the main topic.
Well, last week we had an episode about Star Fox and what's going to happen with that series, with that franchise. And we had a lot of really great comments over on the YouTube channel that I wanted to make sure and highlight. First of all, I want to mention Forestanus. They responded that their favorite Star Fox games are Assault and Zero, which is kind of interesting. Viking Lord Sean, I should say, also made a comment about Punch-Out, F-Zero, Kid Icarus, and Star Fox all need to return on the next Nintendo console. And then we had a comment from Kuro Kamino. We actually had a couple comments from them that were really thoughtful and great about the Star Fox franchise, in particular about sort of Miyamoto working on Star Fox and championing it, as well as Pikmin, and sort of wanting those franchises to be big again. And that it is Miyamoto's philosophy, they believe, that Star Fox is very much about the hardware, which is something we kind of talked about as well.
Yeah, those are some pretty enlightening comments that we actually got there from Kuro Kamino. So thank you very much for those.
We also had a really great conversation over on our Discord about this stuff too. So we always appreciate it. You know, if you want to send us a comment, leave a comment on the YouTube channel, send us a note. We appreciate hearing from all y'all, and we'll try to shout you out next time. We also appreciate all of our patrons over on Patreon. And if you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, just want to remind you that we have a video version on YouTube where you can hit like and subscribe and help us out. And we got a lot of news and rumors to go over. So we're going to start off with Switch 2. Of course, the Switch 2 leaks continue. We got to start with the big one, which is that Nate the Hate says that this is the week that it is being announced. Thursday is Nate's statement. Nate the Hate has a pretty good track record. They are usually pretty good, especially when they give a date, I feel like, right? When Nate says a date, he's usually confident. I mean, not that he hasn't been wrong before, but
when Nate the Hate says a date, yeah.
When Nate the Hate says a date, we shouldn't be late.
Yeah, don't wait. Isn't that great? Anyway, it was interesting listening to that podcast because that dropped today, the day we're recording, which is Monday, and it's funny because there's stuff in the episode where he's like, you know, and I speculate that it will be on blah, 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 or there will be a game here, or I think that it's likely that, but when he says the date, he's like, the date will be Thursday, the 16th.
Oh my
like,
gosh.
It was like very like declarative. And he was even like, if it's not the 16th, I'm fucked. He was like, he's like, all my credibility is gone. So he seemed very sure of himself, which is interesting for a couple of reasons, because we don't usually get news drops from Nintendo on Thursdays. It's also the day that they have a game coming out, so that's going to completely take over the news cycle on that day. What do you guys think about this Thursday thing? It's kind of strange, right?
Yeah. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think. I'm just I've been sitting here all day long, all of these rumors, just taking it all in, and because we're all getting hype, and I'm kind of like excitement, but like no thoughts.
It feels a little soon. Like I was expecting an announcement, but not this, or like, I guess mid-January. I was expecting more February, maybe March, but to get an official announcement in January feels a little, I don't know. Yeah. I'm skeptical. So like, I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, I think that, like, I don't think that Nintendo likes to change their plans because of leaks or anything, but it's like we have really hit like a fucking critical mass, you know? It's like, you know, it was I'm sure we'll talk about the other ones here, but it's like, if ever there was time where their investors are like, hey guys, where's the fucking reveal? You know, like it's now after all of these leaks. So
sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I buy it. It's just there's never been a good time to drop it anyway, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like they might as well overlap with the launch of like Donkey Kong or something, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not complaining because I was thinking about getting my kids a Switch for Christmas because their Switch Lite is starting to Joy-Con drift and you can't replace the Joy-Cons on a Switch Lite. But then we ended up going with the Steam Deck because I was like, I'm not going to buy a Switch right now when there's probably going to be a Switch 2.
Mhm.
I'm probably going to get the Switch 2 because I primarily play Nintendo games. So we got them the Steam Deck, which they've been loving 100%. Totally worth breaking the budget a little bit for that one.
That's good.
But yeah, I didn't get the Switch because like it's still full price. And I was like, no, we'll get them the Steam Deck. I'll get myself the new Switch 2. And when the new Switch 2 comes out, they can have my old Switch.
That makes perfect sense that you would have that thought process too, especially as a parent. Like it's great to get that perspective of like thought process.
Especially because like a lot of the games that we play on the Switch, like they'll just restart a new one. Like they don't really play Animal Crossing anymore. So it's not like we got to worry about porting that over.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you know, my daughter right now plays Hyrule Warriors on my Switch. Like, so she plays on my Switch so she can plug it onto the TV. So it's like, okay, well, now you're still going to have your save file. Now you don't have to, where is the Switch upstairs or downstairs? Who has it? Is mom streaming right now? Because mom has the Switch when it plays something else. So yeah, like them getting my old one's really not going to affect anything. And then I get the brand new one.
Mm-hmm.
As it should be.
Real briefly, before we move on to all the other leaks, just I really hope Nate the Hate is right, and I really hope it is this Thursday. Let's get it over with. I also really hope it ties in with the Donkey Kong Country Returns, and we get that new Donkey Kong game, and it's sort of a double, and that's why they're doing it. But
I will say temper your expectations on that. I mean, I'm with you, Patrick.
I hope.
Yes. It is like a little queer that they're putting this out on the day that Donkey Kong Country is coming out as well, right? And it makes you want to think that those are kind of connected. But it's like I have, you know, another thing that he basically said in his podcast was like, this is going to focus on the hardware, and that the plan is to have some sort of games showcase further on down the line, probably in like a February direct or in February in general. Right. So I would say the realistic expectation is to expect just like a 3-minute trailer.
Like this is the device, which is
like we saw like the Karen on the rooftop trailer. You know?
I was going to say that was the same deal with the Switch. Yeah. We didn't really see
Yeah.
much for games. We just saw like sliver of games that we already knew were coming to the Wii U, right? Was it
or like
Wild?
It was like formless Mario Odyssey, but it wasn't called Mario Odyssey. We didn't know what it was. We just saw Mario running around, right?
Okay.
So it's like we might see stuff like that, but yeah, new Donkey Kong. That would be really confusing. They show a new Donkey Kong game on the day the Donkey Kong Country remake comes out. Yeah, exactly. But that's not a good. Don't do that, Nintendo. Last thing about the Nate stuff is that he did say he thinks it's going to be May to June for launch. That's what he has been hearing. So a little bit later than I think some people were expecting this thing to actually come out. But that does kind of line up with the timeline of that like October Karen on the Rooftop trailer to March for when the original Switch came out, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that would kind of seem right to me, especially May. I think June is kind of pushing it a little too much. But then, and then lastly, he did talk a little bit about some other like Switch 1 games that would be coming as well, or at least that he's heard about. He wasn't like, these are happening like he was with the launch date, but some things that he mentioned were Metroid Prime 2 was kind of reestablished here. Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War. We've talked about that. Kirby Planet Robot, an F-Zero GX port, and Pokemon Legends ZA coming out this summer. So hopefully that all tracks, because I think if those all come out for Switch 1, then that is a fucking stellar lineup for the final year of a system. You know, like those are some pretty hype games.
Well, we can move on to just kind of talking about all the other slew of leaks that have happened around the Switch 2. I'm going to just bang some of this out and then we can analyze it, talk about it. But there was an image that an individual who goes by the name Lana Moon posted on Famaboards of the Switch 2, presumably the game card slot open. There's been some footage of people running some sort of test program on Switch 2. There's been listings that have been showing up in retailers, in particular GameStop and a French retailer of note that include a lot of third-party games allegedly for the Switch 2, as well as accessories and stuff. There has been a dock image that has popped up. And like David kind of alluded to, you know, Genki and I think some other companies at CES were showing off their, you know, accessories for the Switch 2. And Nintendo even made an official comment to CNET Japan saying that that was not based on the real Switch 2 or something
Or they didn't.
like that.
They didn't even say that. They just said the pictures were unofficial.
Unofficial. Is that what
Yeah,
they
yeah.
said?
Or that. So it's.
I think I took that to mean that like they were just using a mock-up of it, but
No.
it could be just like
Yeah.
unofficial.
Yeah,
It's not. We didn't rubber stamp that. Yeah.
It's interesting that
Wow.
Nintendo actually kind of spoke up about that, and apparently they also sent their lawyers to talk to Genki
I
at
heard
the
that
event.
rumor too. Yeah.
Yeah, so because Genki was doing all sorts of shady shit at CES. Like basically, they came out with the 3D print of the console that people could like hold on to, like with their accessories built on it. So that was a huge thing where everybody was like, "There's a Switch 2 at CES," and then they were like off the record, I think, talking to some people and said that they actually had a working Switch 2 that they got off the black market. And then they later like were like, wait, we didn't mean that. And so it's like, and so I think basically Nintendo heard about that. They were like, hey, you shut up. You're not doing this anymore. And the ninjas came and kind of, I think Genki actually left CES. I think they like were not there for like the last day or two of the event.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's like I said, it's critical mass right now. Like we know so many of the features of the system, we know what it looks like, we know the logo, we know like the launch date. It's time for Nintendo to actually get this out there.
I think of note possibly that we might want to just talk about is that these listings for GameStop in particular of all these games, there's a lot of placeholders, but the developer names were there. And it makes sense that, you know, we talked a lot about what are the launch games for the Switch 2 Nintendo wise, but there might be a lot of big third-party games that launch with it as well.
Yeah, I think that's going to be like a huge thing in February, if and when we do get this kind of games showcase on first party and otherwise games coming to the thing. I think like Nintendo first party games are going to be really hype and they're obviously going to want to showcase that. But I think what's going to really drive this thing home is seeing something like Cyberpunk or Grand Theft Auto 6 or, you know, any of these big like next gen games running on the system. I think that's going to finally like wake people up to like, oh shit, this is like a PS5 in my pocket, you know? And so, I mean, I'm sure it's not going to be that powerful, obviously, but it's like, if you can do like a miracle port version, like we saw of like Doom 2016 running on the original Switch, but for much more powerful hardware, that's going to really get people to understand like, oh shit, this is a huge generational leap forward.
Well, we can move on because maybe next week we'll be talking about the Switch 2. We'll find out.
I hope so. We can't do a third Donkey Kong episode in 6 months. Come on, Nintendo.
I want to, but
yeah, I know Patrick wants to.
But anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about what David also mentioned up top, which is these emails that have come out between IQ and folks over at Nintendo. Basically, Luigi Blood, who we reference regularly, is a data miner. Apparently has been going over some leaked information. I don't know if this is... They mentioned the Giga leak in their blog, but I don't know if this is part of that or that has just been analyzed now or if this is something new. But either way, there's a bunch of emails that they've gone over about localization of games and about the creation of the Virtual Console and the NSO system of the NES and SNES libraries that you can, you know, access for free. And it sounds like, briefly, my understanding from reading this is originally they were kind of thinking about continuing the Virtual Console on the Switch, and that there were different people working on different emulators and stuff, and that eventually they switched to this, you know, system that we have now. David, have you analyzed this more, or do you have any thoughts on
yeah, I mean, I read the blog post, and it's long. It's a long one, and it's got a lot of technical stuff in it, but it was a fascinating read, and if anybody's interested in this topic, I recommend you check out Luigi Blood's blog, because it is really fascinating. But yeah, apparently, and I didn't know that a bunch of emails had been leaked here, but if you're not familiar, IQ is essentially Nintendo China, right? So it's like a lot of the stuff that is released through Nintendo is through kind of a shell company called IQ in China. And so apparently there's been a leak of emails there kind of leading up to the Switch's release, and then I think up to like maybe 2019 or 2020. And yeah, and they talk about sort of... It's conversations between them and like NERD, which is the European Nintendo division, who's kind of known for doing a lot of this emulation stuff. And so it's just kind of a little fascinating peek behind the curtain on kind of how Nintendo is approaching their back catalog going into this generation. I think it would have been really cool to have Virtual Console carry through onto the Switch. Although now with like retrospect and hindsight, I'm happy with Nintendo Switch Online and the kind of Netflix of games that Nintendo has put out on their console. I've played a lot of games that I never would have tried had I had to buy every single one of these individually, and I think the price has been very competitive and somewhat negligible, especially if you're doing a family plan. But yeah, it's just interesting reading this, hearing about how, there's essentially 3 different NES emulators currently available on the Switch, between the NSO emulator, the one that was used for the Fire Emblem translation that was released of that original Famicom game. And then I think, what is the last one? It's another one that's like kind of within another game, I think. So it's interesting. It sounds like the whole kind of emulation side of things has been a bit of a mess, and they've been sort of trying to get all their ducks in a row this entire generation. But I think probably the biggest takeaway as far as the Switch 2 is concerned is that the NSO service was made and these emulators were made, they said, to be around for a very long time. And so basically that kind of just confirms that, the NSO, as we know it, will be transferring over to the next Switch and probably generations to come. So I think that subscription service, whether or not you like it, is here to stay. So they will be kind of building onto that infrastructure going forward.
Next up, we're going to talk a little bit about Ubisoft. They have yet again delayed Assassin's Creed Shadows. So the game was originally set to come out in November of last year. They delayed it to February. And then just this week, they have delayed it another month to March 20th. So that is not inspiring a lot of confidence. Ubisoft has had a lot of problems. This is kind of, coming in the midst of their talks with Tencent about, being bought out, and Star Wars Outlaws not meeting their expectations, and them making, layoffs and stuff. So I don't know what's going on over at Ubisoft, but it's not good. And if they delayed it by a month, they probably need like 3 months, right? Like, it's good. That doesn't sound like it's going to be a great launch, but maybe that's just the little bit they needed. I don't know. I'm in favor of delays. Like, that's okay, but it doesn't sound like things are good over there with their production schedule.
Yeah, Patrick said they need a month, which means they probably actually need 3. What they probably actually need is to hire all of their employees back. That seems to be what I'm hearing, is that a lot of these delays seem to be a direct cause of layoffs and
the consequences of our actions.
Seriously.
And here we go.
I mean, you want to talk about a company that is got too big for its britches and is truly just beholden to the shareholders. And so this is a result of that. And it sucks because Assassin's Creed is such a beloved franchise. Like, they have made good things. It sucks. Just all around.
We got a direct this week, but it was not a Nintendo Direct. It was a Like a Dragon Direct.
Yeah, let's go.
This is Furukawa. All directs are Like a Dragon directs going forward.
Oh, that's fine by me.
So I guess they do these directs every once in a while over at RGG or however we refer to them. But this was about the pirate game, the Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii game that's coming up summer. Are you, as our resident Yakuza Like a Dragon person, did you watch any of this? Do you have any thoughts? Are you excited about this Hawaii pirate?
Did. And what I would like to, I'm so glad that I have a new pirate thing to be obsessed with that is looking like it's going to be really good. The pirate aesthetics in this game look really good.
Is there a pirate shaped hole in your heart after Our Flag Means Death has ended? Is that
that and like just things related to Pirates of the Caribbean,
Okay, sure.
without saying more. So this, and Majima is just so incredible. Y'all, he's 60 years old in this. I can't get over that. You have this, I hope I'm half as hot as he is when I'm 60. I just can't. I watched this. Not that I needed to know more information about it, because I was kind of on the fence of watching this because I kind of wanted to go into it spoiler free, but I just came away from it being in awe at, like, this is like a total 180 from our last news topic of, you've got a team who not only like has such incredible like office culture and retention of their employees, but the game is coming out a week earlier than they originally anticipated because development is going so good. That is so crazy. And this video just highlighting everything that's coming in this game, it's just really exciting. And I'm so excited that I'm finally into this franchise now.
Well, we've also got another direct to look forward to later this month, but it's not a Nintendo Direct. It is a developer direct from Xbox happening on January 23rd. And Xbox is in particular highlighting Doom, The Dark Ages, South of Midnight, and a game I have not heard of before that I don't even know how to say really, but called Claire Obscure Expedition 33.
This game looks really good. Yeah.
Oh, really? That's not one. I mean, the other two, obviously, I've seen and heard about, but
it's like Persona with adults.
Oh, sounds good. Yeah, I assume there'll be some other games, but those are the three they've been kind of talking about. So that's happening again, not this week, but a couple weeks later on Thursday, January 23rd. So yeah, we all have that to look forward to.
I don't think that it is a coincidence that this Xbox thing is happening next week. I think that it probably has something to do with Nintendo doing their thing this week. You know, I think that it makes sense. This is kind of like the week where it makes sense for these things to happen, especially if they knew anything. And I'm sure Nintendo and Microsoft are talking about this kind of stuff. There was that talk about how, you know, Nintendo pushed their thing back so that Microsoft could have that conversation about them going third party and all that kind of stuff. And we don't know if that was true or not, but I do think that these companies are talking about when their presentations are going to happen. So I'm interested to watch it. I've kind of fallen off the Xbox train. I have my Series S. I haven't touched it in like a year, and I haven't been playing any game. I haven't been subscribed to Game Pass now for at least 4 or 5 months. So yeah, I kind of need them to win me back a little bit, but it's hard with all the Switch 2 hype going on at the moment.
Yeah, and it's also hard when Donkey Kong Country Returns HD is coming out this week on January 16th, the same day as this alleged Nintendo Switch 2 hardware presentation, that we will all be playing Donkey Kong Country Returns as we watch. But I am excited to play Donkey Kong Country Returns because I only had it on I have it on the 3DS, but it's my kid's 3DS and played it. And I was reminded recently, David, that I won that copy at PAX South when you posted that picture of me holding it. I was like, oh yeah, that's where I got that.
Yeah, that's true, man. RIP PAX South. Yeah.
But we might talk more about that in the future unless Nintendo does do this presentation.
No, I'm sure we'll still talk about it next week regardless. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. We're going to talk about how we're going to format next week's episode live on this episode. Yeah. But that's another conversation we'll table until the end of the discussion as well. And I'm going to that fucking convention. But anyway, I will say that yes, it's completely acceptable to play Donkey Kong Country Returns while watching the Switch 2 announcement. But please, if you're going to be watching Castlevania Nocturne, put the Switch down. Okay, try to lock in. Okay, and try not to miss any of the beautiful animation that we've prepared for you in season 2 of Castlevania Nocturne. But no, I am very excited for this. This is a long lead up of different kinds of Donkey Kong Country releases coming to the Switch, and Nintendo constantly posting about it. So, you know, maybe that's why they've been doing so much kind of hype around Donkey Kong leading up to this, is because they knew they were going to be also having a piece of news overshadow it on the day. But regardless, if you haven't played Donkey Kong Country Returns for the Wii, this sounds like it's going to be the definitive version of the game. I'm really excited to see how it actually plays on the Switch, and any excuse to go back and revisit this game is a good one indeed.
Moving along to some Lego news again. This time, Nintendo and Lego have announced that a Lego Game Boy is going to be coming out. It's really just a teaser that we got. This isn't happening until October, so 9 months from now, you will be able to purchase and build a Lego Game Boy. You know, they did the NES at some point. And they've done a lot of collaborations lately. There's been
they did that big Mario riding a Yoshi that you can crank.
Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of this. So apparently Lego and Nintendo's relationship continues to work out, and they're announcing things that are not until October. But I know that actually sounds like a pretty cool Lego set, though. Building a Game Boy, that does sound cool. And like they did have kind of some of that stuff like you're talking about, where on the NES one it could move and stuff. So I wonder if they'll have something like that on this one too.
Yeah, they always have like little Easter eggs kind of in them, so that's
Yeah.
cool. Katie, are you a Lego person? Do you ever mess around with Legos?
I'm not, but my son is.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have so many Legos in my house. He's saving up because he wants the big Titanic set.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
he's like saving like Christmas money and birthday money and
Those
are
And he
expensive.
doesn't have the set, so he built his own boats out of whatever pieces he has. So I don't really do Lego, but my son does. So it's I'm very tuned into the Lego world as a result.
I have a question for you, and this is, kind of going a little off topic here, but the Titanic, is it the full Titanic or is it split in
It's
half?
the full Titanic.
Okay, it's not like
It's like 6
it's not
feet.
post iceberg Titanic.
No.
Okay.
But it's
Okay.
like 6 feet long. It's huge.
It's like $700.
It's like $700, yeah. Which is
Wow.
why we have not gone there.
Yeah. Hey, you're gonna have to sell your Steam Deck if you want that.
So he's saving up for that. I think there's a couple of Minecraft ones he wants to. So, we have way too many Legos in my house.
Well, we'll move on to talking about the DICE Awards. The DICE Awards is not happening until February. However, the nominees for the video game portion of it have just been announced. And this awards we've been paying a little bit more attention to in recent year or so, as it has seemed to be a nice, complement or alternative to the Game Awards. The Game of the Year nominees are Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth Wukong, Helldivers 2, and Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. So a lot of overlap with the Game Awards, but Helldivers 2 and Indiana Jones, being different.
And Black Myth Wukong, was that in the
I
Game of
thought
the
it
Year?
was,
Yes.
but maybe
It was.
It sure unfortunately was. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are kind of raising their eyebrows with that one. I think that from all of these nominations, I do think that there is a better balance of indie to AAA. I think the Game of the Year, I was a little disappointed to see that it was still a lot of just mainly big AAA games. But still, I think that this is a better group of nominees that we're seeing from this. And it definitely seems, actually on the website for the DICE Awards, you can just straight up go to the members page and you see exactly a list of every single person that was in the voting block for this, and it is game developers here. It is not like critics and some kind of nebulous group of people that Jeff Keighley is like, deemed being worthy of having opinions for the Game Awards. Like you see every single person here. It's a very transparent in that regard, which I really enjoy. I will say I'm a little disappointed that UFO 50 was only nominated for one award. It was a great award to be nominated for, which is Outstanding Achievement in Game Design, which it should absolutely take. But, I just kind of I'm a little disappointed that that game has not. I kind of truly think I made a Blue Sky post about this, that, if you don't have UFO 50 in your best of games at the end of the year list, that simply means you haven't played it yet. And I just think that is the case. There were so many amazing indie games this year that I just think a lot of these people probably didn't end up playing it. Another thing that I do think was really exciting to see was Riven got a nomination, I think, for game direction, if I'm not mistaken.
Game direction, yeah.
Yeah. I was a huge fan of that remake by Cyan. They did an amazing job with it, and they very much deserve that nomination. I think it's one of the only nominations they've gotten this kind of gaming award season. So I'm really happy to see them get their flowers at least a little bit there. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting looking award show, and I'm actually looking forward to watching it. It seems very entertaining.
Yeah, so that'll be happening on February 13th. And then lastly, just to kind of take us into our main topic, we're going to talk more about this, but Awesome Games Done Quick 2025 has wrapped. It ended yesterday, the day before we're recording this, Sunday, the 12th. And I believe they announced that they raised over $2.5 million for the Prevent Cancer Foundation over the course of the event, which is, they always raise so much that it's like, doesn't raise my eyebrows, but it should, you know what I mean? Because it's a lot of fucking money. So anyway, I think we're going to stop there and we're going to talk about that event and speedrunning in general after this break. All right, right, we are back, and this week we are talking about speedrunning and GDQ with our guest, Katie Shesko. We actually did an episode about speedrunning a really long time ago. I think it's episode 20. Thank you, Summer. And this episode is going to maybe tread a little bit of the same ground, but we're going to try to talk a little bit more about games done quick and about Katie's experience being a speedrunner. So
Yeah.
I think probably if you're listening to this podcast, you know what speedrunning is, but just really briefly, I think we should give a moment's talk to this, which is that it's basically people trying to beat a video game as fast as possible. I think that's the short answer.
I mean, yeah, the basic premise is beating the game as quickly as possible, but it's definitely evolved beyond that. Like, games have different categories with different requirements. You have the glitches versus the non-glitches. You have, as we'll talk about with GDQ, people doing really weird things while playing the game. So it's definitely evolved past that, but the basic premise is you're trying to play the game quickly.
Yeah, and Katie, maybe you could just kind of tell us about, your background in speedrunning, how you got into
Yeah.
it, what kind of games you speedrun, and that
Okay.
sort of thing.
Yeah, so I think I got into it starting in 2016. My sisters were talking about this speedrunner named Runner Guy 2489. He speedruns Ocarina of Time. And like I said, I'm in Pittsburgh. He's from Pittsburgh. So like I started watching him. He doesn't really do runs anymore, but like he kind of got started at GDQ. I think he's most famous for doing OT 100% while dressed up as Link in like 2014, like in the very early days of GDQ. And I just started watching him. And then I started like trickling into like watching like Mario 64 speed runs because I'm bad at Mario 64. So it's fun watching other people be really good at Mario 64. And speedrunning was always one of those things that like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. For those who don't know, I actually have a degree in industrial engineering, which is all about like optimization, making things better, finding the best way to do things, which is right up the alley of speedrunning.
Totally.
So, like, I've always been kind of interested in it, but like I'm a musician, I'm a mom of 2 kids. I always think speedrunning as like the world record holders, the people who grind 7-8 hours a day doing speedrunning. So I was like, okay, that's something I'll watch other people do. And it's fun. Like there's so many games that have a speedrun. I think most games have speedrunning components to them at this point. But I was talking to my friend Jason, 31 Jason, and his name has Japanese characters in it too. But he speed runs, but he doesn't really care about world record. He likes routing it, and he does a lot of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom 100%. He's really interested in that, but he's not interested in like the movement glitches. He's really interested in like the inventory glitches that is involved in all of that. So he kind of made his own category that I think he calls movement restricted, where he doesn't do the movement glitches, but he does the other inventory glitches. It still falls under like the glitched category, but obviously it's not going to be the fastest, but he doesn't care about that. He enjoys the routing aspect. He enjoys the, oh, well, what if, we have like this new discovery in the inventory. How would that change the route now that we can do these other things? And he's like, well, why don't you just do Breath of the Wild 100%? He's like, you don't have to do like an official run. Like, why don't you just learn it for the fun of it? And I was like, what's that? Who just does things for the fun of it? I think I kind of have the toxic mindset that I've been working on, that like, unless you're the best at something, why bother doing it? You know?
Yeah.
There's a lot I want to talk about in here.
Yeah.
But I think getting to that and like the mindset of a speedrunner is something that I'd kind of like to get into a little bit, because you talk there about like, I feel like there's a lot of people that are speedrunners are like goal-oriented people or people that like need to be the best at something or are chasing that world record, you know, and that's fun for me to watch as just an enjoyer of speedrunning, is kind of the rivalry that you see. I think like Summoning Salt does great videos on these where it's, you know, the people go going back and forth and kind of this race to the top. Like
Mhm.
that's entertaining and that's exciting. You know, it
Yeah.
reminds me of stuff like the King of Kong documentary about the guys trying to beat Donkey Kong back in the day. And so I love that kind of aspect of it. But then also I was fascinated when you were talking about how you're an engineer. You see in different kinds of people's personalities when you watch events like this, especially when it's all these people in a room together going 24 hours a day over a week. You really start to see like, okay, these are the kinds of people that flock to speedrunning, right? And I think it's people, like you said, that have that kind of like engineering mind, that want to kind of reverse engineer something and break it down and figure it out. But then also, like you also alluded to, those people that could just like sit and grind out runs like all day, every day. Like if I had to formulate these thoughts here into a question, it would be like, how do you, like a mom with like hobbies, how do you find the time to kind of like get your run down to where it needs to be without spending, all day, like on Twitch, like streaming and stuff like that? Like what is it that kind of drives you to figure this stuff out?
Yeah. I think it's like, it was, like I said, shifting the mindset of like, I am not going to be the fastest because I am choosing not to forgo everything else in my life to be the fastest. It's more of the fun, the enjoyment. Like if you're going to grind something like 100%, well, right now I'm working on all Kelton medals in Breath of the Wild, which is a shorter run. But like, if you're going to play something that much, if you're going to be working on a particular trick over and over, I think you have to enjoy the game. For me, I really like Breath of the Wild. Like I'm obsessed with Breath of the Wild. And I got into speedrunning through bingos. I started doing Breath of the Wild bingos because OOT had a lot of bingos. I have a lot of friends that play OOT. And I happened to see that there was a Breath of the Wild bingo. And I was like, I know more about Breath of the Wild than I do OOT. I think that's going to be more fun for me. So that's kind of how I got involved in the community as a speedrunner, because it's a lot of the same people. And like the Breath of the Wild bingo is way more accessible than like an OOT because of the open world aspect. Anyway, that's a whole different topic that we can get into. But I don't have a time on the leaderboards yet. That is my goal for 2025. Because I got really busy with performing at conventions last year. I did a lot more travel than I was expecting. And then I got pneumonia right after Thanksgiving, and I'm just now starting to feel like more normal. But my speedrunning time is my streaming time. So I probably wouldn't be speedrunning if I wasn't streaming, because I like doing with other people. It's fun to like the Breath of the Wild community is very like helpful and encouraging. So people are always coming in, they're doing with tips and tricks. And like I said, big shout out to Jason, who kind of encouraged me to get into it. And Dotso, who I love the guy. I hate him also because he's good at everything. But he came to AGDQ 2024 and he sat with me and we were just like, I was like, I'm struggling getting this consistent. So he'd be like sitting there watching me with the controller and be like, oh, well, if you do it this way, this might be a little bit better. Or, why don't you try this? Or he'll like hop on a Discord call and like send me a little video of stuff. Like people are willing to help with that. And that's what I really like about it, because it's the community aspect of like, I struggled with this and like, here's how I did it. Or like Dotso saw me getting frustrated with like my run. Like I had the route down for Hundo, but like my movement wasn't as consistent as I wanted it to be. So he's like, well, why don't you try something like all Kelton medals where like the run's shorter. So like you can get more completed runs, but most of the run is wind bombs and mid-airs. And that's the movement stuff that I need help with. So he's like, why don't you shift focus? And then you're still working on the things that are going to make your Hundo run better, but it's a little bit not as mentally taxing. I was trying to do a 35-hour. I was getting it to about 35 hours. I wanted to get the run to about 30 before I did the official submission, because with a run that long, there's breaks involved. There's very stringent rules for the breaks, stuff like that. So like the slight pivot while still working on the little things that I need help with. really spoke to like my music brain of like, hey, if this song is really difficult, why don't you find something that's a little bit more enjoyable that is still working on the same things that you need to be practicing?
Something you touched on, Katie, there that I think is a really big, part of this that I want to make sure we discuss is the community aspect. I think, we think of speedrunning as somebody against the game or something like that. But David, even when you're talking about two people kind of going back and forth, there's a little bit of a competitiveness there. But, it seems to me from watching enough GDQs, which we should get into separately because that ties into the community.
Yeah.
But it seems to me like that each game, like you said, has this community and people are sharing information and people discover things, especially in glitching tech, and then they share it or routing or whatever. And that's such a big part of how this all evolves, right?
Yeah, especially because like you have the people, like I can think of like Savage and Piston in Breath of the Wild. They don't do a whole lot of runs, but they do a lot of like the back end. How does the inventory, how does menuing look like what's the code behind that? Piston developed a whole program for the menu manipulation you do in any of the runs, because all of the runs with the menu manipulation manipulate the menu in different ways depending on what you need for the run. So like the hundo menu manipulation looks different than what like the all Kilton metal manipulation looks, which is different than probably like all dungeons and stuff like that. So like Piston built like a whole simulator for like, okay, well, if you do this, this is what's happening in the code and in the memory, so that when you go to this step, this is what happened and that you don't see. And then if you break it, like I do, I've broken the game a couple of times, you can kind of go back and be like, okay, is this fixable? Or is this something that you like, you know what, you got to start over and try it again. So like you have the people that are working on like the tools that help the runners and help with the routing. Like there's a really good program that like for each step of the route does a different point on the map, which is really great in Hundo. If you're like, where is this Korok? I don't have the map. Like it can, so you have the people that help with stuff like that. And then you have the actual runners, or you have people like Jason who routed a glitchless route because someone asked for a glitchless Hundo. The top runners aren't always interested in the glitchless. They like the glitched because they want to go fast and they want to do it as fast as possible. But you have the people that are interested in doing something glitchless. So, Jason's just like, sure, I'll route that glitchless. And he had a lot of fun doing that because like, that's a whole different ball game than when you have 9,000 ancient arrows and 9,000 bomb arrows and infinite berries. If you're doing Hundo, and you don't have that, that's a different route. That's a whole different thing that you have to take into account. So, and some people enjoy that challenge.
Yeah, it seems like the people that are routing too also have in mind, and and you probably know more about this than I do, but just from what I can glean from it is that it's like, I feel like when kind of deciding a route too, I feel like it being enjoyable to do also is a part of that. Because there's kind of, when you're trying to 100% any game, any percent any game, you could do it in many different ways. But if it's just like, bashing your head against a wall forever until you get a thing, that's not going to be as fun as if you could do it. Maybe lose a second here, but it's a lot more fun and exciting of a run for people to watch or to perform. Like, does that have more to do with kind of the routing process than it seems?
Yeah. And, you'll have people like you have your optimal route that the top runners will optimize. But as I've come to learn, each runner will change things a little bit depending on where their strengths and weaknesses are. Okay. So like for all Kilton medals, I get the tower on plateau because that allows me to activate a shrine up in Hebra to make my life easier in case I fail the floor is lava section. But other top runners might not do that because they're really good at the floor is lava. I am not. Or they might change things a little bit here and there depending on what they're comfortable with, what their strengths are and things like that. So like you have your optimal route and then you have people like me that change it a little bit and then will change it again as they learn tricks and it's actually a lot more personalized than you would think.
Totally.
And
yeah.
it's only like the top couple of runners that might follow a very specific route because that is what is a highly optimized. But they're the ones that can spend 5 hours off stream perfecting one little trick that's going to save them half a second. A trick that's going to save me half a second is not worth it. It's not worth me putting 5 hours in. I'm better off working on a specific maybe portion where I keep struggling. And like getting that general portion better, because that's going to save me more time than like grinding a trick that's going to save me 2 minutes,
Yeah. Yeah, I watched a good number of runs this year at AGDQ, but one of the ones that kind of struck me was the Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble run. I'm a huge Super Monkey Ball fan, so that should come as no surprise that I was up at 4 a.m. watching that. I shouldn't have admitted that, but anyway, that was a race, and I love watching the races because you get to see in real time where people's routes differ. Right. And kind of like where their personality lies, even in like the kinds of skips that you do, you can kind of see like, oh, that kind of says a lot about this person that they decided not to go for that, or they decided to go for the risk during the marathon setting or whatever. Right. So I find that really interesting whenever there are two people running at the same time and you can really see that dichotomy present.
Yeah. And even in this, like I said, those top runners, like one might have grinded one trick for a long time and are comfortable doing it in a marathon. Another person may be like, you know what? It's a marathon. I'd rather go slightly slower for the safe strat because I don't want to fail it. If I fail it, that's way more time lost than the little bit of time I went out of the way to get that safety. So, it's really interesting even when you get to see them kind of back to back going at it.
Well, maybe now kind of talking about individual game communities, we can move on to talking about the broader speedrunning community and GDQ itself. Games Done Quick, the event that happens twice a year. We talk about it usually twice a year. We talked a little bit about GDQ in our previous episode too, but we should break it down. And then also, Katie, I'd like to hear about your experience attending it. But it's been around for about 15 years, and it raises money for charity. And then, it's this sort of just marathon of different speed runs. I don't know if there's anything else we want to mention about it broadly before we talk about your experiences. But David,
well, yeah, I mean, I think it's worth talking about. Yeah, the charity aspect of it is, I think, one of the obviously the best parts. They've raised so much money over the year, and basically AGDQ, which is Awesome Games Done Quick, benefits the Prevent Cancer Foundation, and I think Summer Games Done Quick, forgive me if I'm wrong, but it's Doctors Without Borders, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so they kind of have these two big charities that they raise money for every year. That was obviously always been an incredible thing, but I think personally, like, it kind of took on a different meaning to me after my run-in with cancer in the past couple of years. It's like, it's always been something that I've championed because I love the community and I love the weirdos that pop up over these events and all the weird personalities that you see of people running these things. But then, after that, it was like, oh my God, here is a great way to actually fund cancer research, and they really raise a lot of money every single year for it. Obviously a lot more government funds should be going towards cancer research, but hey, if speedrunners are going to take up the mantle on getting this stuff moving, then that I'm all for it. But yeah, it's always been something that I personally look forward to every year. I think when I was first getting into it, I was a lot more locked in, and now that I have a big boy job and I can't just like watch 24 hours a day, it's a lot harder for me to watch the things that I want. But I really love that they put up the VODs for all of these individual runs like really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And that's very special because, I think it's more fun to watch live because there's a better chance of me seeing a run or a game that I never would have watched otherwise. But it's nice that you can just kind of revisit all of the stuff as it goes too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Katie, I know you've been to some. Do you go pretty regularly, or when did you start attending?
I started attending last year, AGDQ 2024, because it was in Pittsburgh. It's in my backyard. I've been wanting to go for a while, but just like the timing and the costs and the travel just made it difficult. Like I said, I've got 2 kids, so school, it was hard, but I was just like, oh, Pittsburgh, I have no reason not to go now because I can just commute every day. I can work around my kids' schedule. So I started attending last year. My kids got to go. for 3 days because it was so cold. So they had some online days, which was great because my son got to watch one of his favorite games, Satisfactory, run live in the stream room. So he was excited about that last year. And then they got to play games all day. Because if you don't know, if you've never been there, not only do they have the stream room, but they have like a big casual room with TVs and monitors and computers. So you can just go in. Most people like will bring their systems if they have like an obscure system. World 9 is there, so you can borrow systems and games if you don't want to travel with it. So people will just come in and they'll either practice runs or little communities will set up things. I know OOT usually does some type of bingo. Last year they did like I think they had like 4 or 5 like screens lined up of OOT, and then like every 15 minutes they moved. So you had to like pick up where the other person was. And like, I don't remember exactly what they were doing, but it was fun
like a
to watch.
relay race.
Yeah.
Like a relay race. Like every 15 minutes you were moving down, which was hilarious. This year they tried to do like a bingo, but it was all cylinders. I don't know if you've ever seen OOT where like everything's a cylinder. You like, there's like nothing. You were like a blank screen with a little mini map and you're a cylinder. It was wild. It was.
I love how fucking busted Ocarina of Time is at this point in like its speedrunning career.
And I'm just like, how do you know where you're at? Now, I was watching, like I said, I'm friends with Runner Guy. He's been playing OOT for however long it's been out. He speed ran it. He's done a lot of blindfolded runs of OOT. So he was doing pretty good, pretty good. But I'm just sitting there thinking, where are you? How do you know what you're doing? But I've seen like Smash tournament, like little Smash tournaments set up. So yeah, like outside of watching the stream, you can go and play. So like I sat and practiced in Breath of the Wild. I met someone who was playing like an obscure Japanese game, but he happened to speed run Nier Automata, which is another one of my favorite games. Turns out we were at the same concert in DC. We got to talk about that. He's trying to convince me to speedrun Nier. We'll see. But like, you know, you'll sit down and people will be like, oh, what are you, like people will wander around. Like, oh, what are you working on? What are you practicing? Are you doing a run? Are you just playing casually? So you get to meet a lot of people that way. Like we talked for, you know, a good hour about just Nier and Drakengard and the Nier speedrunning community. And, you know, it's just, you meet interesting people that way outside of that, plus panels and little meetups. And yeah, it's great fun.
I'm curious. So there are panels there. Like it's an actual, because you don't ever see any of that on the stream when you're watching online. Like what kind of stuff do they cover there? There's
like usually just 2 a day. Some of them are just meetups, like Frame Fatales, which is the female speedrunning portion. They do, you know, online charity events with, you know, female femme presenting people, GDQ hotfix. So like there's like little meetups. OOT charades was a panel where you had to act out OOT tricks or scenarios as charades. I have a couple of videos.
It's so deep.
It's hilarious to see how quickly some people get really obscure things out of people just trying to act it out.
Yeah.
Like, how do you act out a backflip? Like, so it's
you just do it like a backflip.
Yeah, it's funny to see like how people will like, like this is Child Link, and
I do a great BLJ impression, by the way. I can slide up any staircase backwards on my butt. So, not a lot of people know that about me.
So there's like little panels like that. There's not a ton. It's mostly just people meeting it up. For the first time, there was a jam space. It was like one piano and a guitar because they told him last minute and he had already booked all of his travel and he was coming from like, I think Iowa. He's like, I didn't have a whole lot of time to rent a bunch of instruments. So he's trying to get more because there's quite a few musicians obviously that go. It was a very musical.
Yeah, well, we'll get to some of those runs here in a second. There were many musical runs this go around, way more than I thought there would be actually. But
honestly inspiring.
Yeah, it was really cool. I love the gimmick runs. I'd love to get to those in a second. But you were actually there playing flute for some of the event as well, right?
I just take my flute and I play in the lobby. No one's told me I couldn't do it.
Hey.
And usually people are really appreciative. They like hearing it while they're eating and stuff. And
Yeah.
you know, some people like to throw tips my way, and I'm like, I'm not gonna complain.
That's the true musician life. Just setting up in the
But-
lobby.
Yeah, I just
no
I
busking
just-
policy at AGDQ.
No, no one's ever. Everyone's been really appreciative. I was like, I'm gonna keep
Yeah.
doing it until someone yells at me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just bring my flute. I set up. I have like a little speaker, and I play my backtracks, and I play my flute. And,
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and people seem to enjoy it. So why not?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we've kind of talked about the sort of gimmicky runs, and maybe we can dig into that. You know, we've talked about bingos and blindfolds and races and stuff like that.
Or dogs playing.
But but it's gotten even crazier, and I think it's fun, and it's the part of the spectacle portion of this, right? It's not just people trying to get world records; it's people showing off these crazy things they're doing, right? Like David, you mentioned somebody last year or had a dog that they commanded to press buttons, and this one had a lot of musical elements. I saw I guess his name is Dr. Doot or something like that. Like the sax, he has like a saxophone controller, and he played Elden Ring with his saxophone controller. And it's really funny because one thing we should talk about too on GDQ is people comment, you know, like there's commentators that explain the game.
The couch.
And they just keep laughing because he's like, dude, and you know, beats a big boss or whatever.
It's hilarious because I was in the room for that, and the crowd got into it, so it was just constantly, dude.
Oh my god!
Like
they were trying the memes from the audience are so crazy. Every year.
My gosh! Yeah. But it's funny to watch the couch try to explain it, and then you hear dude, and it's just like everyone starts laughing because like how can you not? It's hilarious, but it's fun, you know, and the
guy's playing Elden Ring at an extremely high level with the saxophone controller.
Right. It was a no-hit boss run.
Yeah.
So
Jesus
it was
Christ.
clearing all of the bosses in no hits. And what I thought was really fascinating, being a musician and a gamer, was when they were explaining how like the breath support involved because there are certain moments in the run where you just can't breathe, so like you're holding your breath for like upwards like over a minute, and then still having to have that breath support after doing something like that to do other commands. I'm obsessed with that. I'm like, oh, is this how I get into speed?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
the alternate controller
accordion percent.
Right,
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to get an electric accordion and play. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, I loved some of the other ones that I saw. There was the guy who played New Super Mario Brothers Wii, while also playing the soundtrack for the game
Incredible.
on the piano. So I think what it was his feet were the D-pad or the no.
Yeah,
His head was the directions.
Yeah,
because he would like
Motion.
tilt his head for up, down, left, and right, and then he would use pedals for A and B, I suppose.
Yeah,
and so that was crazy seeing him pull off like, you know, really intense like frame perfect jumps and shit like that while also playing the soundtrack to the game at the same time. That was completely mind-blowing.
that was wild. I'm like, I can't even play piano. I can't get my hands to do two different things, let alone get my head and feet involved.
And then
while doing like
seriously.
tricks.
yes.
In a game.
And then he said that piano wasn't even his main instrument, that he learned.
He's like, I don't even like this game.
Yeah. Right. It was like something that he learned because he thought it would be funny. But it also showcases the accessibility in games, right?
Yeah.
You can play something like Mario without your hands, and that's incredibly accessible. I think that's
Yeah.
incredible.
That's
I always
true.
like to talk about one of the best, most inspiring runs that I ever saw. And I can't remember which GDQ this was, but it was a streamer called Half Coordinated. They can't use their left hand. Like they have something wrong where like they don't have a whole lot of use of their left hand.
Sure.
So they play one-handed, and they played Nier Automata, which of course I watched because I love that game. But they were talking about how at the time that was one of the first big games that you could completely remap the controller. And that's how they were able to learn how to speedrun, because they could remap the controller so that they could play it one-handed. So like you see stuff like that is just even more inspiring, that like games are starting to become more accessible. You're starting to see more games where you can completely remap the controller to however works best for your play style or for your accessibility needs, which is amazing. So like even just seeing someone who, you know, couldn't play how most people do with two hands, still speedrunning at a high level. It's just like, wow, it's amazing. Like you just see so many amazing things through GDQ that you probably wouldn't have known about otherwise if it wasn't for events like this where people can come and like showcase their talents.
Yeah, there's that streamer, I think it's Perry Carriel is her name, who does games through mind control. Have you guys seen her before?
I haven't seen that one.
I don't know if she's speedrunning yet. I'm sure she will at some point, but she's got this like kind of like EKG like headset that basically, you know, like will, you know, I think she like pictures certain objects and then that goes to a button mapping that then can do an input for whatever game. So she's been playing games using, it's like she'll have her hands up here so you know she's not touching anything and she's just straight up using her mind to control stuff. I'd love to see her at GDQ. I think that would be, that's an obvious natural progression that we need to see. But anyway, that's beside the point. I think another one, I think the one that's been making the rounds the most as far as the musical stuff this year has been concerned was the Crazy Taxi run, which I've been seeing a lot of that. You know, there was like a full band performing the soundtrack for the game, like behind the runner who was playing. And I think my favorite tweet I saw about that was, this is what it felt like to own a Dreamcast back in the day. It's just like a hard, and there's basically like a mosh pit forming behind them. Like, were you there for that one? They were very
strict with it. I wasn't part of the mosh pit.
Okay.
I talked to the person who was kind of helping organize it, but they were very strict with how many people they were letting up there. So yeah, but there was like a little mosh pit that they got approval to do. Like everyone at GDQ was cool with it. And they kept it small just for obviously for safety reasons. But that was just really cool. Like the whole, like it was packed in the stream room. And like this is a huge room. Like this is a huge ballroom that they reserved for this. And like it was packed and the energy was just on fire for that. It was fun and wild and great. And yeah.
It's just
it was
really
awesome.
Funny to see the band play so hard and like really sing the song and then, you know, and then have to stop in the middle of
as soon as the level was over. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And then have to do that song again, you know, but only get this far.
Yeah.
It was the same. Yes. I really enjoyed watching it because of that.
It was so fun. It was, and they were like perfect with their timings with like just the hard stop. Like, level over, done. Mid lyric done.
Yeah, I love seeing, definitely, because, you know, a lot of times when you start to get into gimmicks in any sort of thing, all of a sudden you're like, okay, are we losing the sauce here? Like, what is this really about? Is this really about beating the game fast anymore? But for something like GDQ, where it's like, speedrunning like has the potential to be a very dry endeavor. You know what I mean? Like, especially if you're going by the rules every time and you're just trying to beat it and you're the kind of person that grinds every day and doesn't, you're not like necessarily the most sociable person in the world. You're not great talking on stream or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it could be a dry event, but I think the fact that they like have all these like great hosts and interstitial people that are like running the event that keep the energy up and keep people's interest in the event as it's going, and they do these gimmick runs. I think it's a really wonderful idea that they have to like keep engagement strong during an event like this. You know, you could just tell that this is the 15th year that they've done this, you know what I mean? Because every year that GDQ happens, it just gets more and more watchable of an event, if that makes sense. And I say that as someone who's a huge fan of this event, right? Like, I just think it gets better every single year. And I, for one, am completely happy with the more gimmicky runs because, you know, not every run is like that, you know, and it's like you've got your hardcore randomizers and all this kind of stuff. And I'd like to get into some of that here in a second as well. But I love that kind of stuff about GDQ, and I hope they never stop.
Space it out too, because like earlier in the week you had the Breath of the Wild 2 players 1 controller, any percent, which was like only a half hour, which was, you know, really cool. And then like the Crazy Taxi was a little bit more towards the end. And like it's kind of sparsed out so that like it doesn't feel like it's all gimmicks. You've got like the serious runs, the hardcore runs, and then you have something fun and playful. And then you have like the serious games that like everyone knows about. And then you have some games that like you're like, this is a game. How is this a game? I never knew that this game existed. So I think they did a really good job this year with the programming and, you know, putting things in interesting spots and not feeling like, you know, one part of the week had all the good runs while there wasn't any good runs anywhere else. Like I felt like they usually do a pretty good job of like having good runs that people will always look forward to spaced out well.
Yeah.
What was the thing you wanted to talk about, David? You just mentioned maybe.
Oh, I mean, I just brought up randomizers, and I think that's something that I find fascinating because I'm not exactly sure how they work, but I thought maybe we could just talk a little bit, like, if not just about randomizers, but there's a lot of Zelda running in particular this year. And I know that you're a Zelda speedrunner. Like you said, there was obviously the 2-person 1-controller Breath of the Wild run. There was a like 3-hour Tears of the Kingdom run or something like that, which
they did all dungeons.
Yeah, all dungeons. I didn't get to watch all of that. That was during the work day, and I was a little indisposed.
I had to dip out early because I had to come home and do a private lesson.
Yeah.
She just started, and she like loves Pokemon music, and like was like really excited to start lessons. I was like, I don't want to cancel on her. I was like, I will sacrifice watching Tears.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. Yeah. But yeah, in addition to that, there was also an Echoes of Wisdom run, which is I think
some of that.
And that's a new run. I stopped watching as soon as they got to the final dungeon because I haven't beaten that game yet. I don't want that dungeon spoiled for me. But and then obviously
OOT.
The OOT randomizer.
No logic.
Yeah.
Logic.
And that was really insane. And I think sometimes like randomizer runs, I kind of like, I don't know. I guess I've never really understood randomizers. But it's like, I mean, do you have any experience with them? Have you ever played any of them?
I've done a couple of OOT randomizers. I've done like solo randomizers. I've done multi-world randomizers. Just the regular randomizer, you're doing it by yourself, or like everyone has like the same seed, like you'll have races and stuff. So basically the premise is like any place you would get an item, they're all shuffled in the locations. So like if you go to Kokiri, to go get the Kokiri sword, that might not be it's not going to be a Kokiri sword. It might be hookshot or a shield or whatever. And like, you kind of have to go to the checks, like go to the places where you can get an item where you don't really need a lot of stuff, figure out what you have. And if you're doing like a logic randomizer, like nothing is going to be in Jabu behind Boomerang until you get Boomerang. So like the idea is like, there's logic to it that like, you're not going to have to go to Fire Temple until you like have the hammer, or stuff like that.
They're like intelligently created, I guess.
They're intelligently created.
Logic ones are.
The logic ones are. The no logic means it could be anywhere. So like you may have to learn tricks. Like Megaton Hammer might be on Volvagia. Like you might have to beat Volvagia without the hammer to get the hammer because there's no logic. There's no rhyme or reason. It can literally be anywhere.
Sure.
They've gotten so ridiculous where like skull tools are randomized. Pots are randomized. So you got to know where all the pots are to break them for items.
Yeah.
I think grass patches are now randomized.
Oh Lord.
It's gotten a little too much for me.
But it really speaks to, you've got to love the game. You've got to know, like you've got to have a part of your
inside
brain
and out.
That's literally dedicated to where everything is in a game.
Yeah. And if you're doing a no logic, like the glitches to get to some places that you might not be able to get to otherwise.
Right. Fully being able to exploit it. Yeah.
I will watch all of that shenanigans. I have friends that like doing the no logic stuff. I will watch it. I will not participate in logic.
I mean, he beat it underestimate. He got in with that one. It was pretty crazy, and there was definitely points because I did watch that one, or I think I fell asleep during some of it, but I watched the rest of it, and it was like seeing him be like, "Oh my fucking god, I don't have the ocarina yet," and just being like, "I got to do these like glitches that allows me to float up, or the hook shot." He didn't have. I don't think he had the hook shot the entire run. He didn't
get bombs until like 2 hours in.
Yeah,
like not having a single explosive until 2 hours in was wild. That makes it difficult with what tricks you can do. Like you have to know some obscure tricks or like go to some really gross places that you can get to without being able to like use a bomb to get places.
Mhm.
Yeah.
'Cause there are some disgusting covers. that you do with
Yeah,
bombs and stuff.
it seemed pretty rough. Yeah.
It was play tested. Usually stuff like that, like they get someone who play tests the seed.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah. So the couch knew the seed that they were giving.
So Runner
beforehand.
Guy actually play tested the seed.
Okay.
So
Got it.
they, they'll go through, and the same with bingos. Like if you see a bingo, usually someone will like go through a bunch of boards until they get something that like it is going to showcase the run really well, because like with bingos and stuff, like you can get some really nasty goals that are just not going to be fun. So like they'll either build a custom board or like kind of keep re-rolling, and then they'll play test it, make sure that's going to be under estimate and stuff like that. And for randos, like they'll generate seeds until something is not going to be like so boring to watch or so extremely difficult that it's not going to be it's going to be frustrating for the runner in a not fun way. Obviously some frustration of like, I don't have bombs 2 hours in, where's my hook shot? How do I not have a hook shot? Like that's like the fun frustration of like, but like, there's points where you're just like, okay, I've now spent an hour and a half looking for one item. That's no longer fun.
Yeah. And if it's like, again, there's a schedule here. So if it's going to go like 5 hours, you can't have a run like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, usually someone on the couch or someone in the community will play test it or put it together so that it's good for the marathon. At least from everything that I've talked to, like everyone I've talked to with the games that I've interacted with people with, like that's usually how it goes, is it's vetted to some degree.
Well, I think we should head towards wrapping up this conversation. I think, we've talked about all the wacky stuff and all the all the adjacent things, but I think there's something just inherently fascinating about watching somebody speed through a game that you've played. Like we're just talking about Echoes of Wisdom. I watched that and I just remember sitting there. It's kind of a newer game, so they haven't found a lot of glitches and things, but still just watching them use the echoes and just move through areas and like avoid enemies where I'm like, I could have just spun through that whole room.
Well, they also do have a wrong warp already, like two months into the game. So yeah, they definitely have some big skips.
Yeah, I guess the run was glitchless. This particular run was glitchless.
Maybe that's why watching it was like, them moving more than they would have if they'd played glitched or whatever. But anyway, this just kind of reminded me of what's fascinating about speedrunning inherently. So yeah, as we kind of close this out, I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to say anything else that we wanted to make sure and talk about.
I mean, I could talk about this for hours. So like, I'm happy to touch on anything else.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe if you had like any big takeaways, like from this particular show, or if there's anything about GDQ specifically that you would like to see going forward, maybe that's something you could touch on, Katie.
Yeah, I would definitely like to see more of the jam space, because obviously we have a lot of musical people in the community. So I think bringing more of the music into it, whether through its panels or like little concerts that are going on also outside of it, that would be fantastic. I met a couple people on staff, so I'm going to see what I can do for future events. But I think the one thing that I would also really like to see is like, we like to see the world record holders. We like to see the people who are like going super fast, but I would like to see a little bit more emphasis on the casual speedrunners. I like to call myself a casual speedrunner. I'm not pursuing world record, but I am pursuing my best time. What can I feasibly get to with the amount of time that I can put towards it? So I think like whether it's like a segment where they talk about that, something like that, because I wouldn't have started doing speedrunning myself if it wasn't for Jason and Dotso, who are there encouraging me and being like, yeah, it's okay that you're not the fastest. Like, if we gotta tweak the route a little bit, we tweak the route, and like here's how we can do it and stuff like that. And like, here's the tricks that like, why don't you work on this one first and then do this one, and like helping me get to my best time. Because I don't think that's talked about enough. I think more people think that because they're not 20 somethings with all the time in the world
Right.
that they can't speed run, that people in our 30s with kids and full-time jobs and stuff like that, like there's still a space for us to speed run if we want to. And like, that's what I would like to see more of, is like more of the casual speedrunners coming out and like people being encouraged to pick it up, even if they aren't trying to be the best, but they pick it up because like they love the game and they want to spend more time playing it in a new way, or that speedrun looks really interesting. Like I want to try it, because there are some games where like I've never played it, but like the speedrun for it is like fascinating. Like whether it's the movement or the glitch or whatever it may be, some people pick up games because they're like, oh, that looks like a cool speedrun to try.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to see more of like bringing the casual people into it so that they feel welcome. Because it's sometimes, when there was the discussion about the break rules of being like, well, if you can't, condense your 30-hour run into one weekend, then like, why are you even bothering? And it's like, because I want to.
Mm-hmm.
And like, we shouldn't be celebrating people like going on 5 hours of sleep because they have an 8-hour break that they have to decompress and shower and eat and sleep before they have to get to the next segment of the run.
Oh my God.
Like, like, well, you should be able to play this game for 9 hours straight. Why aren't you? Well, like, because I'm old, like, and I have responsibilities. And sometimes like my husband gets stuck at work and I got to go pick up the kids. So I got to stop what I'm doing. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
I have other priorities in my life, but that shouldn't preclude me from speedrunning. And so I would like to see more emphasis on bringing in the casual people, because I think the more people playing these games, especially games that are older, is just better for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, and that's not something that you think about, and that's a reason I'm really glad that we have you on this episode to talk about it, because it's like, I think I feel like the vibe of GDQ is like anti-gatekeeping, like in general, and it's like opening, or maybe it's like opening up speedrunning like for the masses, and it's like letting people in, and I think that that's a really great energy to move forward with for the community at large, and from what I understand, it's like a lot of the speedrunning community, like when you join these discords and you start to like figure out the routes and stuff like that, like the communities are like incredibly helpful. I think that's something that is like that I love to see in these, is that aside from the fact that just speedrunning in general, just the idea of like taking something that already exists and then kind of morphing it into something new and making this new beautiful thing out of something, like that kind of postmodernism of speedrunning in general. Like I'm a big postmodern art enjoyer, like I love that kind of stuff. So I love that in general, but like the community aspect and kind of this anybody can play. I think that's definitely such a great way to go forward with it. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Maybe I'll bring up like having little panels where you can like go learn a speed run. I know Frame Fatales do that, where like they have a game of the month, where like every month they have a new game that they specifically work on learning the speed run for. So having something like that at GDQ, like in a more official capacity, might be a good way to go forward. But like you said, like a lot of the communities, at least the communities that I've joined, most of them are Zelda. I've joined like the Near Drakengard one, and they usually have routes posted of like, this is the starting route. Here's videos of all the glitches. Like here's, there's usually a wealth of information. If you can't find something, you can ask and someone will help you. I know for Breath of the Wild, like they used to do like little boot camps where like if you needed help, you can go on and being like, hey, I'm struggling with this trick. Can someone hop on? You'd hop on a Discord call. Someone would hop on a Discord call and help you. I've had speedrunners show me tricks while they're streaming. I'd be like, oh, wow, like I didn't know you could do that. And they'd be like, oh, yeah, like here's the setup for it. Or they've come into my stream and sat for like a half hour being like, oh, well, yeah, here's how you do this. And it's just heartwarming.
That's so amazing. It's like such an inherently competitive scene because everybody's trying to get the best time, but everybody shares all their shit. Like I love like how open source speedrunning is. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I think it's such a cool aspect of it.
It's amazing, and it's a great way to like meet people and like for the introverts like me who have a hard time like pushing themselves into communities, like just kind of existing and doing something, and then usually someone's just like, oh hey, what are you doing? Like it's just a great way. Like I met so many people because like I was playing flute and they're like, oh hey, that's really cool, like I heard you playing earlier, that was awesome. Or like I was sitting in the back cross stitching and I had someone like just sit and admire, because I'm working on the big tapestry behind Impa and Breath of the Wild. It is huge. I've put 500 hours into it.
Oh my god, I love it.
I'm obsessed. I have like the 3 games that I'm obsessed with. But like I was sitting there and they like just sat and watched for a little bit, and we were talking about like the crafty things that we do. Like it's just, and you know, it's such a great community, and like everyone just is there to like meet people and hang out, and I love it.
It's honestly so encouraging hearing you talk about it, and it's making me want to hang out with you more. But like for real, no, because I've always been like tangentially like interested in speedrunning just because I am such a gamer, and always felt like it was kind of this thing that would never be like something that my brain could, you know, handle. But especially seeing like the gimmick runs and the showcase runs of like very specific things within certain games or like the races, that kind of stuff feels accessible to me. I'm like, whoa, like there are games that I am like obsessed with enough that maybe there could be something that I could like figure out. And hearing you talk about the community in that way makes me feel like, okay, so maybe there is like a space for, or even just playing whatever game I love the most as fast as I can, not needing to be the fastest at it, just doing it because it's fun. It can be a hobby. Just like sports, right? Like I don't play pickleball to be the best at it. I play it because it's fun. I can do it because the speed running can be the exact same. I'm not going for the world record. I just do it because it's something that I really enjoy.
Yeah. And I can say like I said, I got into it from bingos, and like the Breath of the Wild bingos are really accessible. Like we have people who are like top tier speedrunners who've done bingos, and people who are like, I'm still going to grab a horse and I know no tricks. And like we do cooperative bingos where like we all just sit together and try to get these goals, and we sit and chat and have fun. And it's just like, it can be fun. Like, yes, there's the competitive aspect. You have those people that are like hardcore, will grind and play for hours a day. Like Cheese with SM64, who's like an SM64 god. But you have, like I said, I can speak of Breath of the Wild because that's the community I've spent the most time in. Or even OOT. Like, I don't play a whole lot of OOT, but when I do, there's usually people there that are like, will play with me to do something cooperative, or will help me learn new tricks, or be like, hey, how about you, like, maybe instead of playing with your crappy controller, like, totally legally emulate it with, like, the hardware that you have that is good. I was like, why didn't I think of that? This is why I don't play. I was like, now, damn it, now I gotta play.
Yeah.
I have no excuse.
It's so cool to see such a collaborative way to play what normally would have been a single player game as well, right? You've created this both competitive and collaborative scene for primarily single player games. So it really has created like a totally different, but like not dissimilar space to what is normally seen as like the esports competitive gaming scene. And
that's a good point.
That really speaks to me.
If that's the one thing you take away is like, just try a speed run for the fun of it. And like, start with something like glitchless. There's usually a glitchless route out there. That way you don't have to learn anything super weird. Mm-hmm. You're just playing the game in a optimal way. Like,
you learn like the basic movement tech or whatever. Yeah.
Because even if in glitchless routes, like you still have probably things that would be considered a glitch technically, like weird skips and stuff. But it's usually, they're usually not super hard. Mm-hmm. And even if they are, like someone's probably done a not super hard glitchless. Like there's just so much information out there, and you can, like I said, totally change. You don't have to do the super optimal route. And that was hard for me to do at first. I will fully admit that, because I'm like the type of person, if I'm not going to do it the fastest, correct way, not going to do it at all. Until someone was like, Katie, like even the top runners have different routes because they have different things they're good at. And I'm like, well, that's logical. Why didn't I think of it that way? But I totally have that. I can have a very narrow mindset sometimes. So like sometimes it just takes someone being like, you can just change it so that it works for you. I'm like, you can do that. So but like I said, most of the communities are really welcoming and they get really excited when someone new wants to run it. Like you'll have a ton of new best friends because they're just like, ooh. Like I said, I told that one guy, I was like, oh yeah, I started learning, like trying to do Nier. And he's like, I'm hitting you up on Discord. Like, it's like, please do, but also like, shit, what did I get myself into?
All right. Well, I think that is going to wrap up our conversation on speedrunning and GDQ. We are going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the games we've been playing recently. All right. I've still been playing a lot of UFO 50, and I have been playing more Mario and Luigi Brothership and a lot of Minecraft Dungeons. But I think the thing I wanted to talk about this week is I did get kind of hooked on Street Fighter 6. So I've been pretty much playing at least a few matches every day. I'm just trying to get better at the base game. I picked this up a while back and I started playing it over Christmas or maybe right before actually. But either way, I now play at least a few matches a day and I'm mostly playing as E Honda. And I really like it. So I'm going to keep trying to get better. But similar to speedrunning, I'm definitely not going to be beating anybody who's good anytime soon. I am still working my way up through the CPUs. And also, I didn't realize just how robust Street Fighter 6's single player campaign is. It's not really for me, but you like create your own character in one of those sort of modern AAA mega character creator and then go through this whole story where you're actually fighting people on the street. What do you know? It makes sense. You just kind of walk around on the street and like pick fights. I dipped my toe into it, but I'm like, no, okay, I just really want to play as this set characters. And maybe I'll go back to it. But anyway, that's the thing I want to talk about this week.
So I'll go next. I have been playing a couple games. I played a little bit of Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble online with Weast the other day, and that was a ton of fun. That's the first time I've actually played this game online, and you can play the entire like single player adventure online with people co-op, which is really, really cool. I don't think we actually did any of like the competitive stuff or any of the mini games or anything like that. It was just straight up playing through levels, and that was a blast. I really recommend anybody who hasn't picked up that game yet, who is a fan of the Monkey Ball franchise. This is definitely one of the best Monkey Ball games of all time, and it's so cool that they have online features like this. I'd love to see just more games that just are normally single player playable in multiplayer, you know, because it just kind of makes sense and it's just a fun time and it's a really good, like, fun hang with people when you're just kind of doing the same level at the same time. So that was a blast. I really enjoyed that. I'm going to be playing hopefully a lot more of that online in the future. And then I do want to bring up, I kind of got back into streaming. I took about a month off of streaming over December and all the winter stuff. It was a little convoluted and hard to find any time to stream, but I got back into it and I've started a run of Outer Wilds. I've never actually, yeah. I won't spoil anything. Don't worry. But I'd started Outer Wilds before when it was on Game Pass, and I put it down. I'm a huge fan of Myst and Riven and Cyan games, like I brought up earlier. And so, you know, everybody that I know that is like a big Myst fan is like, oh yeah, Myst is my favorite game, and then Outer Wilds. You know, like they always bring that up as well. And I've finally, you know, I've decided to play it on Twitch because, kind of like Myst and Riven, it's easy to kind of put those games down unless you have like a good reason to like keep going, right? And so this is like my motivation to actually like continue through the game, and I'm so glad that I'm doing it that way, because it's also a game that, you know, you want to kind of like think your way through, and there's a lot of puzzles and there's a lot of like taking in lots of big information. So kind of like narrating the game as I'm playing, reading all the stuff out loud, like it just makes all the stuff make more sense in my head for me. So I've been really enjoying playing through Outer Wilds. It is an incredible game. I'm also a big fan of like space and space travel and orbital mechanics and like astrophysics and stuff like that. And it's hitting all those like nerdy space parts of my brains for me as well. So yeah, I've been really enjoying Outer Wilds. I can't wait to play through that game. And I won't spoil anything for anybody, but man, what a miraculous experience that is. And it's a game unlike any other. It's really very special.
I'll go next. I have not really done a lot of gaming lately because like I said, I've been spending most of my time rehearsing and at my sewing machine. I did boot up Yakuza 0 again for like an hour or so. Finally met Majima and I was absolutely hooked by his character intro. Cannot believe how much I didn't know about these games. Did not realize, like, I can't believe that I like haven't been spoiled on these games at all. Cannot believe how much of my kind of character Majima is. And I'm like debating on what I say about it just because I wasn't spoiled, so I don't necessarily want to spoil other people on it. It was just so incredible. It involves a giant cabaret band. So that's so that really spoke to me. And I haven't been playing this, but I've been watching my roommate Kyle play it. Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I have played these games previously, and somebody did a presentation on the how great the like musical storytelling is in these games at our PowerPoint party that we did on New Year's Eve, and that just brought us right back into the games. Just the audio design, visually, narratively, like the God, it's the flow of it. It's so gorgeous. It's nice to have on the TV, but at the same time, I also like every time there's a sad cutscene, I want to stop and go watch it. And I'm like, I'm crying now. I'm in tears on my fabric. Yeah, the Ori games are just gorgeous.
Yeah, Katie, what about you? What have you been playing recently?
Oh, okay. Well, I did a new thing on my stream where my chat can do like channel points or donations and subs, and that goes towards a game list to get me to play more games than like the 4 games that I play all the time. So I picked back up Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. I have a sordid history with this game. I loved it, played it as a kid. It glitched and locked in the final boss when I was first playing it. So I technically never finished it.
Yeah.
And then I played it again when my sister moved in with me like back in 2016. It glitched again, but I finally beat it. It kept like freezing in the final boss. And I don't know why. This game hates me. So I'm playing it again on stream. So that's kind of like my community game. But other than that, I have been obsessed with Genshin Impact. I picked it up in July. I started playing it when it first came out because everyone's like, it's like Breath of the Wild, but better. And I was like, that's a hard, like those are some big words considering how much I love Breath of the Wild. I was like, okay, this is great, but it's not Breath of the Wild. And then people got very pushy with like the wishes because it's a gacha system. And I was like, fuck all of you, I'm done playing it. Didn't pick it up for 4 years. But I've been going to so many conventions and like it was still really popular. So I was like, all right, fine. I'm going to give it another chance. Picked it up in July. I'm hooked. I play it all the time. I play it daily. I have the little Boo Tao from Hu Tao. He's like I got this for Christmas. He's a pillow. I love him. My friends sent me a little Hu Tao. And like when I'm not on stream, she sits in my chair. So yeah, I've become obsessed with Genshin. So outside of my speedrunning Breath of the Wild, I've been playing Genshin. I will probably play Genshin after we're done because I've got resin to spend. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been obsessed with. But all of the Nier talk I did, I'm like, ugh. My daughter started playing Nier. I'm like,
oh, no.
I have to pick that back up. I don't got time for this. I'm trying to work on a Xenoblade 3 album. But those are my 2 games, Genshin, Wind Waker, outside of speedrunning Breath of the Wild, because I'm determined to get all Kelton medals on the board. And if I get that, then we're back to hundo, because why play new games when I could play Breath of the Wild 100% over and over?
Well, very nice. Thank you so much, Katie, for coming on and talking to us.
Thank you so much for having me. I love geeking out about speedrunning, and I encourage anyone who's been wanting to go that it's totally worth it, and it's a lot of fun. And come to Pittsburgh in January. It's totally not cold and miserable.
Well, thank you. And thanks also to MilkyWay.co, who does our website. Thanks to Corduroy, who does our music. Thanks to all our patrons over on Patreon. If you're looking for me, Patrick, you can find me online as PDYX.
You can find me mostly just on Blue Sky now at Weebwitched.
I'm pretty much over on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Katie? Where can people find you online?
I am everywhere pretty much as Katie Shesko. Just type my name in. I'm the only one that under my name that's doing what I do. So you can find me on Twitch. I speedrun on Twitch and YouTube. YouTube has music videos. I've got a new song dropping in 2 weeks. Another one with Cello Cat. This one's been a long time in the making. We both got really busy with stuff and I got sick and that's no fun. But like I said, I am working on a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 album. So if you like Xenoblade Chronicles, flute album coming hopefully this year. You can find me everywhere.
We got a few of those in our community. I'm sure that'll speak to them. If you find a
excited.
flautist named Katie Shesko, that's the one you're looking for. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switchheads on Twitter and Blue Sky. We are at Super Switchheads on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We have a website, switchheads.com, and we have a Discord, a Facebook group, and a Patreon. We'll have links to all three of those in the description of this episode. Whether you're watching it on YouTube or you're listening to it on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review, a comment, a like, a subscribe on any of those things. Tell your friends about the show and join us over there on the Discord. Chuck in a buck on the Patreon. We'd love to have you a part of any of these communities. The Discord particularly is such a wonderful place where we all get together and talk, and we'd love to have you join over there. So please consider doing that as well. That's going to do it for this episode. We're going to have a great episode next week. We're going to say it right now. It's going to be about the Switch 2, right? Come on. Let's just fucking let's manifest.
We're manifesting.
Yeah. I think it's going to happen. Regardless, we're playing Donkey Kong, so we'll be talking about something next weekend. But make sure you tune in next week. Don't touch that dial. We got another banger up there in the tube. But in the meantime, gang, you guys know the drill. Actually, real quick, I do want to say also to any of our listeners that might be in the LA or Southern California area, I know a good number of friends of mine have been displaced by the wildfire. We're thinking about you. It has been a very intense and difficult week and for that entire part of the country, a lot of my immediate family included. So it's been at the very tip top of my mind. So if there's anything that any of us can do for any of you, please feel free to reach out to any of us at the handles that we've just said, at least myself. I'd love to help out in any possible way we can. I know it's been very difficult. So I just wanted to keep all of you in our thoughts and make sure that we said that before the end of the show. So much love to everybody that we have in the LA area. Stay strong. But in the meantime, that's going to do it. We love you guys very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.